up tonight on Inside City Hall. The U.S. Supreme Court has blocked the redrawing of New York's 11th congressional district before this year's midterm election. We'll bring you the details.
This was our last best chance to strike what we're doing right now and eliminate the intolerable threats posed by this sick and sinister regime.
President Trump says the United States will continue its military operations against Iran until that nation is no longer a threat. We'll bring you reaction from local lawmakers and talk more about how we got to this point with a Middle East expert.
I'm truly humbled and I'm truly grateful that this moment has come in my life.
A Queens man whose double murder conviction was tossed back in January appeared in court today as the Queens District Attorney's Office weighs whether to hold a new trial. We'll bring you the details.
Federal leadership steps back. We in the city are going to step up.
Spectrum News health reporter Erin Billup sat down for an exclusive interview with Dr. Alistair Martin, the city's new health commissioner. We'll bring you part of their conversation. For the best news, debate, and analysis of New York politics, join us inside City Hall. Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Monday, March 2nd, 2026. I'm Errol Lewis. We've got an update for you about the U.S. and Israeli strikes in Iran and local lawmaker reaction, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, this just came into the New York One newsroom. The U.S. Supreme Court has sided with Republicans by ruling that New York's 11th congressional district, covering Staten Island and part of Brooklyn, does not need to be redrawn before the midterm elections. Our Dan Rivley has been looking into the ruling and joins me now with more. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Errol. That sound you hear must be Republicans exhaling in relief. They were waiting for this because this was a last-ditch effort to save the only Republican-held House district in New York City. So let's take back to where this case began. A Democratic firm that had handled the Democratic Party's redistricting litigation around the country targeted New York's 11th congressional district that covers Staten Island and southern Brooklyn, and a trial judge in Manhattan basically argued with the plaintiffs that the district dilutes the votes of Black and Hispanic New Yorkers there, and that violates the state's constitution. Well, that decision was a shock to Republicans, and that led to a quick appeals up through the state courts. But before even waiting for the state's highest court to weigh in on this redistricting fight, Republicans went right to the Supreme Court, and that was a gamble that paid off. So that decision just came down. Let's just take a look at it. Justice Samuel Alito wrote about why the stay was offered and said that these cases concern a state court order that blatantly discriminates on the basis of race. Justice Alito goes on to say that the order requiring a new district that lets minority voters elect the candidate of their choice is, quote, unadorned racial discrimination. So while the motivating factor for redrawing the district was race, the factor that kept it intact was also based on race. Now, Justice Sonia Sotomayor dissented and basically argued that it was unprecedented that the Supreme Court would act without giving the state's high court a chance to weigh in on this matter, Errol.
And so just procedurally, so everybody's clear on this, the case does go forward. What they're saying is that you don't change the lines before the election. This will be heard by the full court perhaps at some point in the future, and there will be some kind of resolution. It's just not going to happen right now as far as the redrawing of the lines.
Right. It appears that the House districts for New York are going to be set the way they are today for the midterm elections. But Justice Alito really threw cold water on any kind of attempt to redraw this again on the basis of race. He basically said outright, this is barely constitutional, even to Justice Sotomayor's dissent, saying she doesn't even argue for its constitutionality. Obviously, he thinks this is clearly unconstitutional. It says so in the opinion here.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan. We're going to get back to you in a few minutes about reaction to the strikes in Iran. Here in Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump said today that the U.S. assault on Iran could last 4 to 5 weeks or perhaps even longer. The Pentagon reports that 6 Americans have been killed in an attack on early Sunday morning. Spectrum News national reporter Evan Koslov joins me now from our Washington, D.C. bureau. with more on the latest stuff out of the Iran attack. Good evening, Evan. What do we know about this deadly strike so far?
Well, Errol, we got some new information from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth this afternoon. He said that the missile got through air defenses and then struck what's called a tactical operations center. The Washington Post reporting that this facility is in Kuwait, and this marks the first deadly attack of U.S. service members in this quickly developing war.
This was our last best chance to strike.
President Donald Trump on Monday making his first public appearance since the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran on Saturday. In an operation that killed the country's supreme leader and many other top officials. The president saying on Monday that this operation will likely last weeks.
Right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that.
The president outlined 4 main objectives: targeting Iran's missile capabilities, quote, annihilating the country's navy, preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, and stopping the regime from funding regional proxies. The president did not call for regime change on Monday.
The hour of your freedom is at hand.
That's despite urging Iranians to, quote, take over your government in remarks on Saturday, shortly after the attacks began. U.S. and Israeli strikes have killed at least 550 people in Iran, according to an estimate by the country's Red Crescent Emergency Service. And the Iranian regime has responded by launching missiles and drone attacks targeting U.S. bases, Israel, and allies across the region. At a briefing Monday, Pentagon leaders said more loss of life from U.S. service members is possible as the attacks continue.
As the president warned, an effort of this scope will include casualties. War is hell, and always will be.
We understand the risks of this mission and the weight of the responsibility that we carry.
And a new front in the war has also opened in Lebanon, where the Iran-backed militia Hezbollah fired on Israel and Israel struck back. Lebanon's government reporting dozens of deaths.
And the Trump administration is signaling that this is just the beginning of operations. On Capitol Hill today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he was there, and he told reporters that the, quote, hardest hits are yet to come. Errol?
So now, Evan, there's a major debate going on down there now, right? I mean, Democrats and even some Republicans are criticizing the president for attacking Iran without the approval of Congress. What are we hearing from our own lawmakers?
Well, Errol, as you might expect, a lot of this is falling along party lines, as it often does. Republicans, for the most part, are celebrating the attack, while Democrats are criticizing the president for, as he said, not coming to Congress first. But there have also been some unusual bedfellows that we've seen on Capitol Hill. For example, Congressman Warren Davidson, he's an Ohio Republican, and he was voicing his concerns, saying that it's Congress that declares war, not the president. Meanwhile, Democrat Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, he took to social media saying that he was, quote, baffled why so many Democrats were coming out against the operation. And this week will be a really major test for the administration. Both the House and the Senate are expected to vote on what's called a War Powers Resolution, which would require the president to get authorization from Congress moving forward. But Errol, getting this passed in Congress, it's not going to be an easy task because they need a handful of Republicans to support it. Plus, the president could just veto the measure if it passes.
Okay, thanks very much, Evan. Meanwhile, New York leaders are reacting to the U.S.-Israel bombing campaign in Iran with law enforcement deployed here at home. Elected leaders debated the Trump administration's decision to attack the Islamic Republic and its senior leaders. Our Dan Rivoli has more on that. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Errol. So when there's conflict abroad, first thing New York leaders do is increase police presence at sensitive locations and then weigh in on the merits.
No one is ever going to defend that regime, full stop. But the scale of what is happening now demands answers.
The bombing campaign from the United States and Israel against Iran had Governor Kathy Hochul on Monday concerned about the conflict reverberating back home.
There could be retaliation from these efforts, and not just on the fields in Iran and the Middle East. You know, we are a vulnerable state. We have a very vulnerable target in New York City.
As when conflict erupts overseas, sensitive locations in New York are getting extra police protection, like houses of worship, or here, the permanent mission of the Islamic Republic of Iran near the United Nations.
This is a high state of alert for us.
Mayor Zohran Mamdani on Saturday also supplied a greater police presence and condemnation.
Today's military strikes by the United States and Israel mark a catastrophic escalation in an illegal act of war, of aggression.
The reaction from politicians to the attack on Iran as varied as the protests on the streets. From the jubilation of Iranians waving the flag of Iran under the Shah to the left-wing demonstrators who raged against the bombings. Nicole Malliotakis, the only GOP House member in the city, gave unqualified support to the Trump administration. The United States has taken decisive and courageous action against Iran to defend our citizens' interests and partners after the leading state sponsor of terrorism would not negotiate in good faith or commit to diplomacy over nuclear capabilities. For House Democrats here, the specter of Iraq and Afghanistan loom over the Trump administration.
And we saw people celebrating at the fall of Saddam Hussein at the time. And then what was the plan thereafter? And it went into complete chaos. So that's why you want to know what the plan is afterwards.
We cannot get into another forever war that costs trillions of dollars, that should be going to the American people, and that has no end in sight.
Congressman Goldman went on to say that he wants to get that war powers resolution before Congress and learn more about this potential endgame for the Trump administration in Iran, Errol.
I mean, one thing that makes this different from one of the Gulf Wars where we sent 500,000 troops over there is that this is a bombing campaign that can literally be stopped at any moment.
That's right. And it's interesting the way Democrats bring up Iraq and Afghanistan, the forever wars, but this is actually quite different. And you just said it. It is a bombing campaign. It is an aerial campaign. It is not moving troops there. And you don't have the sectarian conflicts that you had in Iraq. So I think Democrats, if they want to be opposed to this and be opposed to what the Trump administration is doing and have a say, I think they need to look maybe a little beyond what happened in Iraq and start looking at what's actually happening in Iran and some of the unique differences there compared to what we saw after the war on terror.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, after more than 3 decades in prison, a Queens man's murder conviction was overturned, but his future remains uncertain as prosecutors weigh the possibility of retrying that case. We'll bring you those details in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
The storm came through with 120-mile-an-hour winds through our neighborhood. My daughter had to evacuate to our house while we were out of town. Sure enough, power goes out. When the generator kicked back on, it, of course, powered the Spectrum modem. She didn't lose service, and we didn't lose connectivity with her through the entire storm. We both breathed a sigh of relief. To have her feel safe and us feel reassured that she was okay was priceless.
Real customers, real reliability. To get the most reliable internet, visit spectrum.com/stay connected.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Going into the 2026 election, local races will determine national policy, from the economy to public safety. From the governor's race to the balance of power in Washington, this year's ballot has no shortage of important choices. Let Spectrum News New York One be your resource for balanced, up-to-date coverage and analysis, so you can know what the issues are and how they impact your community. Always dedicated, always local, always on. Decision 2026 on Spectrum News New York One. Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where we have an update on a legal saga we first reported back in January. A Queens man whose 1995 double murder conviction was overturned was back in court today, hoping to learn whether prosecutors in Queens are seeking to try him again. Our Ayanna Harry was in the courtroom and joins us now with the latest. Good evening, Ayanna.
Good evening, Errol. From the day he was arrested in 1992 up until now, Alan Porter has wanted one thing: to have his name fully cleared after he was accused of a double murder. Porter was optimistic that day had finally come, but the wait continues.
I spent many nights hurting, many nights praying, and I'm just grateful.
For Alan Porter, Monday morning's return to court was both bitter and sweet.
This is just a culmination of many tears.
In 1995, Porter was convicted of a Queens double murder and has spent every year since then declaring his innocence. On January 30th, a Queens judge overturned Porter's conviction, and New York One was there as he finally walked out of prison and into the arms of his family.
That's what I'm talking about.
But Porter's freedom may only be temporary. After his conviction was tossed, Porter was released on bond and ordered to home confinement. During his Monday morning court appearance, Porter hoped he'd learn more from Queens prosecutors.
Whether they would be dismissing the indictment, appealing the vacatur decision, or getting ready to retry Mr. Porter.
The Queens District Attorney's Office tells New York One it's still reviewing the judge's January decision. Prosecutors have argued Porter was a drug dealer during the height of the city's crack wars and murdered a rival alongside his girlfriend. Porter has long maintained his innocence. And in tossing his conviction, the judge called out prosecutors for withholding key evidence.
The amount of exculpatory and impeaching evidence that occurred in this case that was withheld is nothing short of substantial and even alarming.
While he's still living in legal limbo, a judge did remove Porter from house arrest Monday, and he's been adapting to how much the world has changed during the 30 years he spent in prison.
Things like cell phones, this is a whole new world for me.
And since his release, one of Porter's dreams has come true.
You ought to celebrate!
Attending Sunday service at Greater Allen AME with his family.
I remember when I was in prison and I used to lift my hands in worship. I used to pray and I used to imagine myself standing here this day. This day.
The Queens District Attorney's Office still has a few more days until March 10th to file a notice if they do plan to appeal the judge's decision. Both parties are due back in court on March 12th, Errol.
Now, was this a case that the Queens District Attorney's Office brought forward itself through its sort of second look clinic, or this was just somebody who kind of fought his way up to this point?
So the Porter legal team did try to have the Queens Conviction Review Unit take a look at this case, but they declined to do so. So Alan Porter filed what's known as a 440 motion, and he went through the court system. They brought in witnesses. They had a whole hearing. This went on for quite some time, for several weeks. And then in reviewing the totality of the evidence brought forward by both the defense and the prosecutors, the judge then decided on January 30th that there was not enough evidence to sustain this conviction. And based on some of the evidence that prosecutors withheld, had the jury known that, there would have likely been a different outcome at the trial.
I see. So now for Melinda Katz and the Queens District Attorney's Office, they now have to decide, well, if we turn it over properly and cure that procedural problem and put it before another jury, we might get the same outcome. I guess that's what they're trying to calculate.
Yeah, that's part of what they're trying to look at. One of the challenges is this trial initially took place in 1995. Are some of the witnesses still alive? Some of the witnesses recanted their statements. So how do you try and convince a jury in 2026, that this is still a conviction that should hold up? That's really the question that they're dealing with right now.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ayanna. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, the city's new health commissioner, Dr. Alistair Martin, says that the agency is focused on the city's affordability crisis in addition to all of the normal health issues. We're going to bring you part of an exclusive interview with our own Erin Billups in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of going to the theater. Onstage celebrates that excitement every week by taking you behind the scenes with the latest news and in-depth interviews of the hottest shows on and off Broadway. So grab a seat, because this is a show you won't want to miss. Join us every Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m. for Onstage.
Onstage is presented by your Tri-State Cadillac dealers. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate your journey.
I had a heart attack about 1.5 years ago, and so now I have an ICD implant that needs stable and reliable internet to give routine checks and daily reports to my cardiologist. When my cardiologist told me he wasn't getting the information he needed, me and my fiance looked into better internet providers, and we found Spectrum. As soon as we switched, he said he saw every daily report, every routine check that they did. It made us feel like we were back in control of my life.
Real customers, real reliability. To get the most reliable internet, visit Spectrum.com.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time.
And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard.
At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan.
Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York One to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood, because our city never stops moving.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories, but first,
stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. While most New Yorkers were fighting the snow that blanketed the city last Monday, Dr. Alistair Martin had something else on his mind, his first day on the job as New York City's new health commissioner. Dr. Martin sat down for his first interview with Spectrum News health reporter Erin Billups to talk about his agenda. She joins us now with more on that conversation. Good evening, Erin.
Good evening, Errol. Well, Dr. Alistair Martin is by training an emergency medicine doctor. Here's a look at our conversation. New York City's new health commissioner, Dr. Alistair Martin, comes to New York from Harvard Medical School and Massachusetts General Hospital, an expert in public policy and emergency medicine.
The emergency room is ground zero for public health challenges. You know, when folks come in with overdose, they're coming to the ER.
Out of one storm into the next. Dr. Martin's first day on the job was during the blizzard. During his first one-on-one interview, the city's new top doc acknowledges he's got a lot to do. The messages are really muddled right now, coming from our federal government, coming from social media. How do you hope to clarify the message for New Yorkers?
When, federal leadership steps back, we in the city are going to step up. We're going to help to make sure that we make it clear for New Yorkers what the correct public health guidance is, what the public education needs to be, what the vaccine guidance needs to be.
Continuing, he says, the job the department is already doing, but making it more tangible for New Yorkers, particularly its fight against health disparities, a mantle he says he will assume even in the face of federal funding cuts to diversity and equity services.
We have pretty specific evidence that the federal government is not a fan of the work that we're doing on equity, and the reality is we're not going to stop doing that work on equity. But it's going to be my job and this department's job to put ourselves in a position to continue to lead in case the federal government comes and messes with our money.
As an appointee of Mayor Mamdani, Martin also takes the health department's helm with a hand on deck to address the city's affordability crisis. For him, he says it's personal. His new job, a homecoming of sorts. He lived in Jackson Heights with his mother when he was a young child.
Quite frankly, it became unaffordable for my mom even back then. And so we moved at the time back then to Jersey.
How do you reorient the department to provide public health through an affordability lens?
The problems that we want to meaningfully begin to address are things like the coming procedural disenrollment wave when it comes to Medicaid, helping people make sure that they know that their renewals are coming. The mayor's been clear on his work on housing and preventing evictions. And to the extent that we can, we're going to play a coordinating role, because we have hundreds of thousands of patients that come through our clinics every single year. And so while people are there, if we screen them, we find out that they've got a landlord that sucks, quite frankly, or if they got a situation that's not safe, we're going to help connect them to right to counsel.
It's similar work to initiatives Martin launched in Boston aimed at smoothing the on-ramp to care for vulnerable patients. He says he's looking forward to tackling that work on a larger scale. What are you most excited about?
It's the best health department in the world, and it's an honor and a privilege to work with these 7,000 men and women and people who are doing this work every single day. Ultimately, I think that my goal in this work is to provide a model for how public health can be done in this country that's new, that's innovative, that's personal and pragmatic, and really makes an impact on the lives of everyday New Yorkers.
Errol, so it was a really great conversation. He says he has a chat group right now with former commissioners, to guide him. He doesn't have a background in running a public health agency, but he's got, the wisdom of the elders to back him up on this, and he's excited to take the helm.
So when he talks about doing things like maybe giving a referral to legal help or something like that, how different is that from New York's traditional approach? I
think a little bit of that has been done in certain areas, but he wants to grow those efforts of utilizing the public health department as it already stands, the structure that's already there, the infrastructure, and use it to help people connect more tangibly to their public health. So, at their clinics, hey, do you have SNAP benefits and WIC benefits? You're eligible for those. Streamlining that process for people, it kind of echoes back to work that he was doing in Boston.
So now, when he talks about doing the work regardless of whether or not it's out of sync with what the federal priorities are, we've heard from some of his predecessors that a very substantial amount of funding for the health department comes directly from the federal government. Are we in for sort of a real clash there?
Well, he says that because they know that this could be coming down the line, that even before he stepped foot in that office, the health department has been building out its sort of resiliency planning. I think they might be putting some funds aside for a rainy day, but that, the goal of public health is to provide equitable access to health care. So he says it's part of the mission that they can't just do away with. So they will deal with any sort of funding cuts as they come, but there is a plan that they're working on in place.
Okay, thanks very much, Erin. We are going to take a short break now. When we come back, the killing of Iranian supreme leader has put the future of the Islamic Republic into doubt and has raised the risk of regional instability. We're going to talk about the war with a historian in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
My time at New York One has shown me that in the city that never sleeps, the news never stops. So as the day winds down, turn to the rush hour.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica Perkman.
To catch up on the stories that matter across the 5 boroughs, with in-depth interviews from the city's newsmakers, plus the latest forecast. Catching you up with today, preparing you for tomorrow. Right here on the Rush Hour. Weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m.
The Nanakuli Valley is the largest Hawaiian community in the state of Hawaii. Because of Spectrum and their investment, Alulike is a place that people can come and access technology. Many of our participants don't have computers at home. We have programs that help students, that help adults get employment. Spectrum gives us the tools to help more people get there.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Today, the United States military continues to carry out large-scale combat operations in Iran. This was our last best chance to strike what we're doing right now and eliminate the intolerable threats posed by this sick and sinister regime.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where we are keeping our focus on the war with Iran, as U.S. and Israeli military operations against that country are continuing for a third straight day. President Trump did not commit to a hard timeline, but said that airstrikes could continue for more than a month in his goal for regime change in that country of roughly 93 million people. Here to explain what is going on and what comes next is Professor Emeritus of History at Baruch College and the author of A History of Modern Iran. Yervan Abrahamian is with us. Good evening, Professor. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. As far as you're concerned, is this a turning point in history? Is the decapitation of the regime, meaning the killing of the supreme leader, a turning point, or is an interruption in what is going to be a continuing face-off between the U.S. and Iran?
It'll be just a bump, because, I mean, the avowed reason for the war is change of regime. And to have a change of regime, you have an alternative to replace the present regime. And there is no basically organized opposition to take over. In fact, the regime is, I think, strong enough to survive with the loss of the leader. It's a highly bureaucratized regime. They've institutionalized authority, and they've already announced basically the next people to lead the state. It's a despicable state, but it's a very, I would say, organized and quite a rational state.
Well, yeah, and Professor, when Donald Trump said that the Revolutionary Guard, the military, the police should lay down their arms, my immediate question was, who would they be surrendering to? Is there an organized opposition that wants to or is prepared to at least attempt to try and step in?
No, there is no organized. I mean, there are people in the diaspora who claim that the son of the last Shah is ready to take over, but it doesn't have an organization you can say it can take over. And also, I mean, it's sort of pure fantasy. The Revolutionary Guards are very ideologically committed. They have blood in their hands. They've killed a lot of people in the last month. For them to actually lay down arms would be suicide. So there's no way they could, you can send a message and they would disarm. They have actually good reason to fight to the last.
So internally, it sounds like things may not change. Let's look externally. Iran struck several countries with retaliatory strikes, including cities like Dubai that had always been considered safe and maybe even off limits. How is the regional tension going to affect the outcome of all of this?
Well, there's been a lot of concern that how Iran would affect and harm the neighboring countries. I think that's exaggerated. I don't think that's a crucial issue. The real issue is how you're going to actually get rid of the regime, replace it. they can, even if Iran does not carry out major damage to the neighbors, U.S. is still, and Israel is still left with the problem. There is this regime. They don't like it. They have no way of really getting rid of it unless they want to invade the country and have boots on the ground. And that's not, I don't think, feasible. So we're in a quagmire. Trump could declare victory any day and come home, but the problem is going to be there. The regime is not going to disappear.
Yeah, when I think back to past years, and as a historian, I know you're much more schooled in this, but there used to be a lot of subversion that was done by the United States, and it involved spycraft, it involved funding opposition, it involved dropping propaganda through many different means, and none of that seems to be here. Regime change through dropping bombs, I'm just not aware of any time at any phase of history where that has succeeded.
I think the word regime, the phrase regime change is a substitute for coup d'etat. In the good old days, U.S. had the military all over the place. They had trained the various militaries. They had equipped them, financed them, and all they had to do is you give a green light, and you could have a Pinochet, or in Iran, of course, the 1953 coup. But that doesn't apply at the present situation. The military in Iran are the Revolutionary Guards, and they're highly ideologically committed. They were the creation of the revolution of 1979. They're ideologically fanatical, and there's no way they're going to basically supplant the regime. Even if they did that, actually, for U.S. and Israel, it would be a worse situation, having a bunch of Revolutionary Guards actually fully in control of the state.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next. There's a lot of politics within that state that we're just not aware of, different factions that are fighting for control and so forth. Assuming that it's a continuation of the old regime, is there going to be any sort of even 5% difference in how they regard opening up to the West or dealing with their own people? I mean, all of those protests that we saw in recent months, I assume that the successor regime is going to want to either make that go away or make some kind of concessions.
Well, the previous regime, I mean, the Khamenei, who was killed, was willing to make for concessions. So I think the concessions Israel and the United States wants are so drastic that anyone associated within the regime is not going to be able to accept them. So if it was basically concessions they were looking for, Obama got wonderful concessions. I mean, the agreement there was actually very actually satisfactory. People who denounced it as that it was a disaster hadn't read the documents. But if U.S. was concerned about Iran having nuclear weapons, there was no way Iran could get nuclear weapons with the agreement that Obama had.
And to the extent that the bombing campaign continues, is there a possibility that there'll be a loss of support for what the United States and Israel are doing right now?
Well, there isn't much support. Internationally, of course, there's very little support. And this is not a popular, basically, war in the United States. I think the more it continues, you're going to have disasters. Like the other day, some 100 schoolgirls were blown up in their school. These type of disasters are not going to go well down with the American public. And, of course, much worse in the international public.
Okay. We will continue to monitor all of this. Thank you so much, Professor Abrahamian. Great talking with you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about the war with Iran and also talk about Mayor Mamdani's response to the military strikes and much more when I'm joined by two top political consultants. Stay with us.
After After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer. As chief meteorologist at New York One, I'm honored to be able to help New Yorkers plan their day.
Morning, noon, or night, our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on, from severe weather updates to our Weather on the Ones. Watch the New York One weather experts with your Weather on the Ones on your TV and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
I moved from Dallas to Los Angeles all by myself. The order of things I wanted to set up was internet, water, then power. I needed to take a shower, but I really did need the internet for work and to watch my shows. That's kind of a crazy thing to admit in front of a camera. Pretend I didn't say that. I got to Spectrum. I was so relieved that I was getting the best bang for my buck. It was a huge weight taken off of my shoulders.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Two milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Bombing cities, killing civilians, opening up a new theater of war. Americans do not want this. Americans do not want another war in pursuit of regime change. We want an answer to the affordability crisis. We want peace. Now, I may be a young mayor, but I am old enough to remember the devastating consequences of our country's pursuit of regime change in this same region not that many years ago.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. That was Mayor Mamdani over the weekend reacting to the U.S. and Israeli strikes in Iran. Joining me now to talk about that and much more are the members of this week's Consultants Corner. Democratic consultants Teresa Gonzalez and Trip Yang are both here. Good to see both of you. What do you make of the mayor's choice to give that kind of reaction to the hostilities in Iran?
I mean, I think he's, shown us since the beginning that he is not afraid to voice his personal opinions. And I think he was right to say that what we really care about, Americans, New Yorkers, are things like affordability. Let's talk about what's happening to us at home. Let's talk about what affects our daily lives. This war is so senseless. It came out of nowhere, and now we have to contend with it. He already has to face all kinds of different levels of discrimination because he's Muslim. Now we have this war added to him having to run a city for the first time. I don't blame him for where he landed.
Yeah. When it comes to the international stage, the mayor's primary responsibility is to make sure that Americans, in this case New Yorkers, feel safe. Of course, we have a growing Iranian-American population here in New York. And all New Yorkers, quite frankly, we're a big international city. When there's this type of conflict, right, we need to feel safe. So he's reassuring the public. He's doing a good job here. Of course, he doesn't have too much statutory power in the realm of military and foreign conflict, but he's doing his job well here as a communicator.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, he's sort of staying out of it, right? I mean, what I heard him say in that clip was, this doesn't matter, but I'll give you my opinion if you really want it. And my opinion, which I think is kind of the mainstream of New York or American opinion, at least expressed in the polls, is that we would rather this not happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, we've already seen some American casualties. There have been reports of dozens of Iranian children being killed. So from a humanitarian level, it's very alarming. Of course, in terms of statutory power, this is a role for Congress, right? The upcoming vote on the War Powers Resolution, the argument that this conflict by the Trump administration is illegal. Of course, Congress needs to authorize actions 60, 90 days. And so the statutory power comes from D.C., not so much from the mayor's office, but the mayor himself is doing a good job reassuring Americans, New Yorkers, that we are safe here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually have people I know who are being seriously inconvenienced, like stranded, unable to get from here to there.
It's real.
Right now, because the ground stops at all of these airports throughout the Middle East really has a ripple effect.
Yeah, it's definitely scary. All of us have probably or connected to somebody we know that's stranded somewhere. Just to go back to how the mayor is approaching this, I also find it fascinating because, it's been, 6 weeks? It's been 2 months since he's been mayor. You can see this shift in tone where he's becoming a lot more kind of middle ground. He comes from an activist background, right? You'd expect him to be a lot more vocal on this, but he is really hyper-focused on being the mayor of New York City, and I think it took him a little while to get there.
Yeah, well, look, one thing they've definitely got to be concerned about, not that there's any specific threat that we know about, but houses of worship, the inevitable protests that will happen when the weather gets just a tiny bit warmer, assuming this continues for a few more weeks, right?
Yeah, I think this is common. Right, we see this every time there feels like there's something happening somewhere. Not that this isn't real, but and I think it's his job to make sure that people don't panic, that we understand that he's put protections in place. I think he's doing a great job of that. And if he didn't, I think people would be a lot more kind of jittery at this moment.
Yeah. There are a number of New York leaders who are going to sort of, weigh in just to sort of be on the record, right? And especially in an election year, there are a lot of candidates who are going to do the same. Does that move elections at the local level? Like where you were on this particular question?
It remains to be seen. I think one of the traps that we as Americans often fall into is that when there is an international military conflict, you cannot take the immediate polling results. That's just a snapshot in time, right? If you actually did a poll of, what does the median American think about these military actions? Well, it just started. We still need to see what the fallout is, what the casualties are. If there is American appetite for growing, hopefully not, but if there are growing American casualties, for example. So it's too early to be seen. But one thing I'll say, and Teresa, I believe, hit this nail on the head, the mayor is laser focused on delivering his affordability agenda. Rarely do you see a public leader this disciplined on it. He is not letting international conflicts. He is not letting all this Democratic base energy protest of the Trump administration. For him, it's very laser focused on, can I deliver? Can I cut costs? Can we build more affordable housing here? Because he knows this is not just his legacy. If he succeeds, Mayor Mamdani, in 2026, he actually can be viewed as an asset for the National Democratic Party and not as a so-called liability, as some distractors would call him.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the many candidates who are running for Congress out of New York City, because Congress has a role in this, although they seem to have been bypassed at this point, but they, in fact, are going to have to be on the record. What would you do if you were a member of Congress and something like this happened, because something like this just did happen?
I think I would do what you see many of them doing, which is denounce this, talk about how the process was not followed, and called the president to task. He legitimately just kind of bulldozed over them and made a decision without talking to anybody. Nobody wants this.
Not the UN Security Council, not the allies, not the Congress, nobody. Let's take a short break. We've got more to talk about with these consultants. We'll do that in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
We have so many ways to stay connected. A single touch can bring us closer to the families we love, the friends we know, and the city we share. And Spectrum helps us keep connected throughout the day, every day. Including more ways to watch New York One as a Spectrum Internet customer. Watch Spectrum News New York One on the Spectrum News app, available on all your favorite devices.
I don't know if the world knows this, but kids are expensive. And when we found out we were pregnant, of course, we were looking for any ways to slash bills.
And making sure
We only had what we needed so that everything was less stressful.
And saving money with our internet bill really helped us out a lot. Came to Spectrum because we were with AT&T before, and Spectrum just had better deals.
That money we saved with Spectrum just added to what we could repurpose for our daughter.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where I'm once again joined by my Consultants Corner. Two Democratic consultants this week, Teresa Gonzalez and Trip Yang. As we reported at the top of the show, the 11th Congressional District will have the same lines that it has had for the last several years. The effort to get those lines thrown out and compel a redrawing has definitively now been ended by the U.S. Supreme Court. What does that mean for the outcome of this race? You actually were working with a candidate who ran in that district just a couple of years ago.
So essentially it's a wash because, quite frankly, many on the Democratic side never expected New York 11 to actually go through a configuration where it gets matched up with heavily Democratic Lower Manhattan and makes it a lean Democratic seat. From right now, it's a safe Republican seat. New York 11 was not seriously contested. The reason why, and look, my firm has done direct mail and political strategy for Max Rose, the last Democratic Congress member from Staten Island. It used to be a seat where Democrats could compete for it. Max Rose was a Democratic Congress member, McMahon before him 2 decades ago. But ever since Trump came into power, it has become a heavy MAGA conservative seat. That being said, on the national stage, it's essentially a wash because California Democrats gained 5 seats. Maybe Democrats gain a few seats in Virginia, maybe 1 in Maryland. Republicans are going to gain some seats in southern states where they control the state legislature and the governor's office. Ultimately, redistricting probably is going to look like a wash. It'll come down to do Americans by this November believe that Trump is helping them on the economic issues, and the polls currently point downwards for President Trump.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the substance of it, to the extent that there was substance, the state courts had said this is in violation of the state constitution. It's it needs to be more of a fair fight district, especially for Black and Latino residents who are increasing in numbers in Staten Island.
They are, definitely, especially with our immigrant, new New Yorkers. I think that's changing the landscape there. But, I don't think anybody believed that 11 was going to kind of be this fair fight. I think it's what, South Brooklyn and Staten Island?
Yes.
Kind of one in the same place. I don't think that there was ever a doubt that it would remain where it was. I don't think that it was possible for Democrats to actually change the way that was drawn. I don't think that was going to ever happen.
Well, it indeed has failed as an effort. I want to talk about the Sunnyside Yards. The mayor went down and continued his so-called bromance with President Trump. They seemed to get along. And while he was down there, he said, how about sliding me $21 billion to deck over the Sunnyside Yards?
An odd couple.
And I don't know if his plane had even landed back in New York before the criticism began from out in Sunnyside, Queens. Is this a good idea, bad idea, a one-off? There's nothing wrong with swinging for the fences, right?
Look, we need money to do things in this city. And whether we like it or not, we have to work with this federal government. Mm-hmm. I think it's smart, I think it's smart to swing for the fences here. And if we can, Trump is a little bit enamored with him. let's take advantage of that and you know, make some real change in this city. You know, I think he both did that and asked for the release of some students that were affected by these kind of latest ICE raids. I think he's really showing that he can be a fair player here.
If Queens does get this pot of gold or $21 billion, it really is another instance of how Queens does get the money. But look, what I would just recommend to the mayor's team, because this came up over 6 years ago when de Blasio was the mayor. At the time, the local Democratic representatives, Van Bramer, Gianaris, AOC, they voted it down. They cited local opposition. So my unsolicited advice to the mayor's team is, yes, Sunnyside Yards, if you have this federal investment, it can produce 12,000 plus affordable housing units, but do not connect it to the formerly failed de Blasio plan, because locally there had been a lot of opposition towards it. Reframe it, restructure it, you know, talk about it in different terms. And of course, the key thing historically with New York, you know, development deals is get the local community input, make your presentations to the community board, or start soliciting, you know, start galvanizing local support if you want it. Because right now, in that part of Queens, Sunnyside, Queens, there are so many contested races, hyper-contested race for Congress, state Senate, and state assembly in that neighborhood. So it's going to be a huge electoral issue this year.
So you're not saying they should throw out the 2020 master plan that took, like, you know, 6 years to put together, right? I mean, this is not a small project.
I would say there is an urban development planning aspect, of course, to these mega large-scale affordable projects. But then there is the public affairs, the communication, the galvanizing public support. Right now, in 2 months, we've seen Zohran Mamdani is significantly more skilled than Bill de Blasio at this crucial element of being mayor. I would say continue to lean into the mayor's strengths. He has a lot of popularity. This might be worth it to invest his you know, still rising political capital into this.
You know, I've been following this. I looked into some of the history. This proposal was put forward by the Regional Plan Association in their first regional plan in 1931. So we've been talking about this for 95 years. Teresa Gonzalez, Trip Yang, thanks for coming by. That's going to do it for tonight's show. Thanks for watching and have a great evening. We'll see you next time inside City Hall. Going into the 2026 election, local races will determine national policy, from the economy to public safety. From the governor's race to the balance of power in Washington, this year's ballot has no shortage of important choices. Let Spectrum News New York One be your resource for balanced, up-to-date coverage and analysis, so you can know what the issues are and how they impact your community. Always dedicated, always local, always on. Decision 2026 on Spectrum News New York One.
This is a very special place. It is a place where we like to think we make memories.
We have the capacity for nearly 20,000 people in the arena.
Working at a building like this, you have access to so many resources. It's about utilizing the tools that we have to be able to create those memories for our partners, for our fans, and for anybody who steps into this building. At the end of the game, they're going to leave here feeling like they enjoyed the experience, enjoyed the game, and that's what we're here for.
A venue like this has a lot of moving parts, but at its heart, it has its technology backbone.
Spectrum powers scoreboards, ticketing, point of sales. They also provide a highly secure network that takes care of fan security, security of the Wi-Fi access, and any data that our fans are sharing while in the arena.
Our fans have an expectation that technology is part of their experience, and Spectrum helps us do that.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of going to the theater. Onstage celebrates that excitement every week by taking you behind the scenes with the latest news and in-depth interviews